I was working on a summer hoodie. I think I made this hoodie in lace paisley hoodie in 2017. So before we start making the hoodie, we need to make a pattern. Before you make the pattern, you have to find like a hoodie that fits you really good, that you like the fit. So you can basically buy something that fits you good, and then we're gonna cut it up to make a pattern from it, since you know it fits perfect. If you don't have anything in your closet, you can go to Goodwill. Goodwill has a bunch of hoodies you can buy for like $2, and then you can just use that to make a pattern. So the first thing we're gonna do is cut each part of the hoodie. So I made patterns before. I made a miniature model to show. So we'll cut about 5 pieces. So we'll need a front piece. The shape will look something like that. And then you have the back piece, and it'll look like that. And normally the back piece is kind of like the curve isn't as deep when you compare it to the front. The front is normally deeper, so that's how you can tell from the back and the front pattern. And then we have a sleeve, and then you have the hood, and then you have the front pocket. Here's your front piece, and then the pocket goes like that. So you can just start with like the arm. When you cut, you want to make sure you cut on the seam. You see the top stitching here? So you want to cut here in the middle and go all the way around the armhole. You do that everywhere on the hoodie. So when you cut the hood out, you like around the collar part, you go all the way around, and the same place right here. We cut like right there. It looks something like that when you start cutting on the seam, in the middle of the seam. Just keep cutting all the way around. So it should look something like this when you finish that. So, but the armhole has a seam too, underneath like the armpit. It goes all the way down. So we'll need to cut that open. On the miniature mock-up, it's like, what we have is like, it's like sewed together right now. So now we have to cut underneath the armpit on the seam, so we can just open it up, and we'll have this kind of shape. So same thing, every time we cut, we're gonna cut in the middle of the seam. We'll keep cutting in the middle of the seam. And at the same time, we'll cut the cuff off. So we'll just cut in the seam. So now the armhole is open. So it looks like that. So the shape's like that, basically. So we have the cuff cut out, so that's the shape of the cuff. So I just finished cutting both sleeves out, so it looks like this. Both sleeves are gone, so now the next thing we're gonna do is cut the hood out. So same thing, we're gonna cut around the neck, the collar area, in the center of the seam, and just go all the way around. So now we got the hood cut out. So the shape is like something like that. On my miniature version, it's like something like that. So now you have the front and back piece left. Next thing I'm going to do is cut the waistband out. So same thing, cut on the seam. So we got the waistband cut out. The last thing that's left is the front and back. So basically we'll just cut on the shoulder. We'll cut on the shoulder and then we'll cut on the side seam. So it'll basically look like this when we're done. The front and then the back. So we got the front piece cut, the back piece. So now we have everything cut out. We need to make a pattern. I have construction paper, or it's like painter's paper. I get it from Home Depot. If you get it at the normal fabric store, it costs like, I don't know, like $50 a roll and only lasts. You probably finish it with like, if you make like 3 jackets kind of thing. But if you get this big roll from Home Depot, it'll last like forever. And it only costs like, I don't know, $15, something like that. And now we're gonna make a pattern. So basically, we'll start with the front piece. So basically we'll fold it in half. We'll also fold the paper in half to fit the front piece. So we're going to place the center fold on the paper fold and just match it up. We'll just trace around the whole thing. Make sure you paper to go all the way around, but you need to make sure we leave room for seam allowance. I'll explain that later. But just know you gotta make at least that much room, maybe like ½ inch or off the paper. If you have weights, put some like weights to hold the fabric in place. So now we're gonna pretty much trace all the way around the front piece. So here, all the way around. I'll do dash marks all the way around. So it'll look like something like that. So when you're done, it'll look something like that. Now the next thing we'll do is we'll connect the dots. So it's basically like that right now. And then we're gonna cut it out and then we open it up and then we'll have the front piece. So it's like perfect. That's how we did the fold. So it'll be pretty much symmetrical on both sides. The next thing we're going to do is add seam allowance. Let's say we're going to use a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance, which is like there. So basically when you start sewing, you place the needle on this line where the needle is to the edge is a 1/4 of an inch. So that's how we know where to place the needle when we start sewing. And like sometimes I'll like match it with, look at the foot. So from this distance, from the foot to the needle, that's a 1/4. And just watch the edge of this foot to know it's a 1/4 of an inch from the needle basically. Here, where the needle goes down on this line, and then we're gonna add the seam allowance here. so it's like 1/4. So we'll just add a 1/4 all the way around. If you have this kind of ruler, you can just measure from 1/4 from here to the edge, and it just makes things quicker when you're adding seam allowance. Make something like this. It looks like this right now. And then we open it up. So now we got the front piece done. Now we can start working on the back piece. So we'll cut this front piece out, but we won't like cut it fully out. We just want to save it for later, basically. We'll just like keep it intact, and we won't cut it out yet. Same thing with the back piece. We'll fold it in half, and we'll do the same thing with the paper. We'll fold it in half, and then we'll place the center fold of the fabric to the center fold of the paper. And then we'll do the same thing. We'll go all the way around and do the dash marks. Add a 1/4 seam allowance. Cut the back piece out and then save it for later. You can kind of label each piece. So this is like the back. And then we can label this front piece. So the reason why I didn't cut everything out yet is because we got to make sure everything fits together. So like, for example, this is the back piece, this is the front piece. So when we're sewing the shoulders together, you have to make sure it's the same measurement. So when we sew from here to here across, we have to make sure it's the same. So this front piece is around 2 inches, the shoulder. So the back piece is 2 inches as well. If you look at this we just made, we'll see if it matches the shoulder seams. So the shoulder of the front piece is from here to here is like 9 inches, not counting the seam allowance. So we'll check the back if the seam allowance is matched. So it fits. Both shoulder length is about 9 inches. So basically you want to go around each piece, the side seams where we sew the sides. Make sure from this point and this point is the same. You can tell like when we just put it over each other, it just matches. So let's say you make your pattern and it doesn't match up. Your shoulder doesn't match up, like it's longer. You're putting it together and then you notice like it's shorter. So you have to add length to here. You wouldn't touch the neckline, you would add continuing on the shoulder, on the back, since the back is shorter. So if there's like a scenario with the side seam, like it's shorter, if you can see, you wouldn't make adjustments for the side seam on the armhole area. You try to avoid adding or subtracting length from the armhole. You would do it towards the bottom hem. So then we'll add length to the front. So we'll add from here to here. So we'll just like cut out some scraps and just tape it on to adjust for the length. We're about short, like 1/4 inch, so we'll add a 1/4. So when you extend the length of the shoulder seam, now you have to kind of blend the armhole, just sketch and blend the armhole to fit the curve. So the side seam, we're about short 1/2 inch, so we're gonna add 1/2 inch towards the bottom hem, not the armhole. or the shoulder lengths match. Side seam match up now. So once we know for the front and back pieces, we measure and make sure the shoulder and the side seams are matching up, then we can cut. So now we're gonna cut our front and back pieces. I normally pin the pattern so it doesn't move around. So now we're gonna make a pattern for the sleeve. This is the front armhole. So you're gonna measure the length here on the front. We're gonna measure the length of the armhole on the back. The front curve is around 12 inches. And the back curve is 12 inches too. The curve of the armhole to be 24 inches. So now we're going to work on the sleeve. So we're going to match the folds from the fabric and then we'll match it to the paper fold. So we'll do the same thing. We'll like trace around with dash marks. So now we're going to connect the dots. So like I said, we measured the armhole to be 12 inches on the front, and then the length in the back is 12 inches, so it's a total of 24. So we should have 12 inches from here to here. So we're short, it's 11 and a half. So what we're gonna do, since we're short, we're gonna add length here. So we'll add half an inch out, and then we'll blend in from this point to here, 0. So we added to here half an inch. So now we have to connect and draw the line all the way 0. Now we gotta do the hood. So here's the hood. The hood pattern looks something like that. So we're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna trace and do dash lines all the way around. So we'll do the same thing next. We'll connect the dots. So we need our front and back pieces again. So now we have to figure out on the front from this point all the way to the other side. The length of the neck is there, and then on the back. So from there and then all the way there. The front curve of the neck is, the length is 15.5 inches. On the back, 9.5 inches. Then you combine the lengths of the front and the back, it's about 25 inches. So now we know that. Now we can make sure the length, the hood on the neckline is half of 25, so or 12.5. So we're short half an inch. We have 12 inches, so we have to add 12.5. So when we're gonna add length, we don't add length on the back of the hood, not here. We would add on the front. So we'll add half an inch this way, and then kind of blend it, taper in the line going here to 0. So it should look something like that. And then we tapered the line, went up, and then tapered it, blended in. So when you're getting ready to put the hoodie on, so here's the hoodie, and then you have the front and back pieces. So make sure the neckline, when you measure it, so we measure the neckline all the way around. Minus the seam allowance, mine is 25 inches, and then the hood is 25 inches on the neckline, but you have to add in a total of around 3 inches. So if the neckline here is 25, the hood neckline should be 28 inches, not counting the seam allowance. The total hood neckline is bigger than the total of the neckline of the front and back pieces. And when you do the hood, like for example, I said the total is 28 inches. So this is half of the hood. So this from here to here, from this point to this point, it's gonna be 14. So half of 28 inches. So just make sure the hood neckline is 3 inches, around 3 inches bigger than the neckline of the front and back piece. So now we're gonna add seam allowance. So it'll look like that, basically like that. So the next thing we're gonna do is the waistband and the cuff. So we have the waistband and the cuff. So you pretty much do the same thing for both. The waistband, just measure around, all the way around, find out what the dimensions and the length is. You do the same for the cuff. We have to find out the length all the way around. I'll do the cuff as an example. So we grab our sleeve pattern. This one looks like this, the sleeve. So basically we're gonna measure all the way around minus the seam allowance. Minus 12.5 inches. So first thing we're gonna do to make the pattern for the cuff and the waistband, but I'm doing the cuff as an example. We're gonna fold the paper in half. And then fold the ribbing in half. Make sure you put the fold of the fabric on the fold on the paper. We're gonna do the same thing. Do dash marks all the way around. And now we're gonna connect the dots. Trace and flip the ribbing vertically on the fold of the cuff. Not the side you cut, not the seam you cut from the sleeve, but the fold. We'll flip on the fold, the side that's not cut. We'll flip it, and then we would trace it, but we don't have to trace it. We'll just fold the paper again. So now we'll just add seam allowance on the top and the side. And so now we cut that out. Pay attention to the shape of the cuff. It's not just straight, it tapers towards your wrist. It's not a straight line. Be aware that's the shape. So that's how the shape of your cuff is. It's folded this way. And then see how there's the fold we did? That goes towards your wrist. And it'll like connect like that. So when I was saying it like tapers, it was in tapers. So now we're gonna make a pattern for the front pocket. First thing we're gonna do is grab some cardboard and put it behind the fabric. And then we'll cut a piece of paper and put that behind the fabric as well. So we'll put the cardboard will be on the very bottom. We normally trace the fabric to make a pattern, but this time instead of like doing the dash marks, we're gonna just use pins, and we're just gonna make little holes around the pocket, so we don't have to cut it out. So we don't have to actually cut the pocket out. We can just make little holes and go all the way around the pocket. So it'll look like something like this. Now we're gonna connect the dots. So we'll just trace half. So it should look like something like that. So it'll look like something like that shape. We'll trace half, and then what we're gonna do is fold it and make sure like the point, like the bottom point and the points, the main points line up. We'll fold the paper there where the points match, like for example like the bottom points of the pocket. So make sure these bottom points match up when we fold it. So now we'll just add seam allowance, a half an inch, not a fourth. We'll add half all the way around. So when you unfold it, you have your pocket. So it'll look like this on your front piece. And you have a little pocket. So now you have all your patterns ready. So you have your front, the back, the hood, the sleeve. And you have the pocket. And then you have the cuff that we made earlier. When you're making the cuff and the waistband, you make it the same way, but it's just the shape that makes a difference. So with the cuff, it tapers. It's not straight. It tapers towards your wrist, and this is the shape of the cuff. And then the waistband, it's pretty much straight. It doesn't taper on both sides. It's straight. And when you open it up, it's just straight. This isn't the actual waistband. I was just doing an example of how it would look like. But you would take your own measurements from the height and the width from your actual sample piece.